Sometimes landlord overstep the boundaries and they do harass the tenants, cut off light, cut off water, change lock, and lock the doors, all sorts of things. And the law say you are harassing your tenants when you do that. But here, what? I'm not the guest, I'm only the host, but I just give you that preamble. So you would call a friend, you would tune in, turn up the volume a little more. So if you're in the kitchen, you can hear that this morning's program, even while you're in the kitchen and your set or your radio is at your living room. Because it is important that we do understand the law, not just the criminal aspects, because there are a lot of reports who come to the police of a civil nature. While we are not able to prosecute it, we are able to create a level of comfort, a level of peace. So on that note, we want to jump into the program. But again, we can only be a success through this medium. Thanks and gratefulness goes out to the management and staff of Real FM 91.9. And I tell you, there's this technician, when you look at him, this young man is so humble and calm. I don't think if he mash a fly, that fly gonna dead. At first, he is so cool and calm. But hear what? When it comes to his job, he's on par. He's on top of his games. And I'm speaking of none other than Dugo, Vondell, Joseph. You listen him and he's just good. With all the talk I was talking there, I was just allowing him to do his thing so that my colleagues from St. David's can go live via our YouTube. So we are both audio and video this morning. We don't often have those senior ranks in studio. So whenever I get them, I sell them, I broadcast them. And for the station sergeant, the officer in charge of the St. David's police station, the sergeant, that middle management, to be here this morning, it speaks volume to his leadership and staffing. So I won't take up any more of the program. I would just allow them to introduce themselves, let them greet their listeners and their policing area, and then we jump right into the Landlord and Tenant Act, Section 164. So on that note, I say good morning to Sergeant, and how are you?
I'm fine this morning. A pleasant good morning to you, Ms. Grant.
Right.
I'm very happy to be here this morning as being the officer second in charge of the St. David's Police Station.
Grateful.
My name is Sergeant 609 Horsford, an officer with quite a bit of experience. And this morning, with the topic in mind, here as we discuss, we find that it is very much prevalent, not just in the St. David's area, but all throughout, all over the area of the different policing areas. Mm-hmm. It's very, very, very much prevalent. And so we're hoping to touch the listeners this morning, and probably at the end they will be edified in terms of how they go about in terms of dealing with such situation when it arises, if it ever arises.
Yes. And good morning to you, Madam Constable. I don't even know this female. What's your name, ma'am?
Pleasant good morning to you, and good morning to our listening public. Okay, my name is Tandy Chichester, Woman Police Constable, number 441.
Girl, if you only come back here a second time, you're taking my seat, You listen how you pronounce your words. And I remember the first time I came on Real FM to do radio program, I was a guest. And the manager, Mr. Danal, he said, when I introduced him, I said, pleasant morning. And right away, everybody know Andre. He just cut me. He said, you hosting that program after now. I'm not going to continue. Anybody who says pleasant morning and not pleasant good morning, you're already within the media foot. I'm like, oh God, Andre, that's easy so for you to sell out yourself out of the program. But I was ever grateful. And, I listen as to how you pronounce and introduce yourself, and it speaks a lot. So, Miss Chichester, is that your first time to Real FM?
It's actually my second visit here.
Oh, it's your second visit, so you're no stranger to the dance, right? What about you, Sergeant Horsford?
Well, it is my first time.
Your first time?
First time here.
Is that your first radio program?
Yes, it is my first.
Wow, so yeah,
First.
the good thing, not just radio, you're getting
Yes.
some video as well,
As
because
well.
you can go back to YouTube on the Real FM and you'll be able to
see.
listen and look at yourself, and
Exactly.
that's how you get to critics. So while Chichi didn't want to go live, but then you can always go back, because as we look at growth, and we have our junior staff, it do helps us, right?
Right.
So let us go into, tell me, in regards, and this is just an open question for either party.
Yes.
This morning we're not going as per rank.
Yes.
We're
yes.
going as for the information and how
Information.
we prepared ourselves for this morning's
Of course.
program. So when we speak to one here about the Landlord and Tenant Act, Chapter 164 of the Laws of Grenada, what does that speak to? What one should be thinking of?
Right. When one hears of the Landlord and Tenant Act, one should think about in terms of what it says, in terms of how you go about doing business. For example, if you intend to be, whether it be a landlord or a tenant, you want to know your rights. Mm-hmm. You want to know your rights and how you go about that, because you do not want to find yourself in problems later on.
Right.
Because too many times, persons, for example, as I said, if you chose that particular business, they fail to edify themselves, and although they just get into the business, and this is where the problem arises or occurs sooner or later. So you need to edify yourself with the laws, so that you will not find yourself in any problems sooner or later.
In terms of your policing area, how often or regular you and your staff receive complaints or have to respond to incidents of landlord and tenant disputes?
In terms of my policing area, St. David's, probably for the month you might have about roughly, let's say 10.
For the month?
For the month, yeah, 10.
And that is ranking a lot with
Well-
incidents of or offenses, criminal
Yes.
offenses.
Yes.
And in terms of your staff responding, how cooperative or willing is either party, whether it's the landlord or the tenant, in regards to what the law says, based on the complaints? Is it
Well-
situations where they have to revert to civil recourse, or with the police intervention we are able to quell the situation?
Yes. Well, most of the time we respond being the police, we are basically able to quell the situation.
Right.
You know, come to some form of resolution basically,
Grateful.
and it works.
Right.
You know, because bearing in mind with those kind of matters, landlord and tenant issues or disputes, we bear in mind that and sometimes we will have to respond quickly because the situation can get out of hand.
Yes.
Whereby you have physicality in terms of person causing harm or so to each other, or weapons being used or so. So sometimes we have to wait and respond to it quickly so that it doesn't get out of hand. And as I said, we quell the situation so persons can go back to their normal lives,
Right.
day-to-day living.
Right.
You know.
So listeners, it's 20 past the hour, so our first 20 minutes has gone, and that little chit chat was just to get my guests settled in, you
Yes,
know.
yes.
So we take a brief commercial, brief with our theme song. There's a 2 lines from Ketura, and we'll be right back with the conversation with the RGPF.
Before I make a flaw, you're ready to hand this towards the law. Remember when they kill Renty, you said I'm police too choky. No man fights with police and dead. You say the force is where killers are bred. So when I hear you complaining, I have to agree. Is you society guilty of police brutality against me? The brutal society brutal. Oh gosh, they brutal. My society brutal.
Yes, Keturah George, somebody asked me, Miss Grant, why you all choose that song? One, it's a police officer. If you realize, Western theme song again was chosen by me when I was on the West, and that was from Scaffy, God rest his soul. And then when I was on the East, I used Police Brutality, Keturah George, because again, as a police, that's some of the ways we get to showcase police talent. And when you really sit and listen to Keturah George, Police Brutality, there is so much in it that you can take away that lends itself to community policing, because community policing is a police and a community working together. And in so doing, police are just the guardian, the custodian of our society. But we got to work together, right? So hence the reason why Police Brutality, Keturah George is the Eastern Division conversation with the RGPF team song. And let me stick that in. CRD and prosecution no longer housed at the Grenville Police Station, but it is now housed at Lackworth Building on Gladstone Road, upstairs the Parliamentary Office. You can get CRD on 406-0193. So we're back in studio with my two guests from the St. David's Police Station, and it is Sergeant 609 Hosford and WPC 441 Chichester. And this morning we're looking at the topic of Landlord and Tenant Act, and that is Chapter 164 of the Laws of Grenada. What or who is a landlord? Oftentimes we use the word. And also a tenant. Who are those persons?
Right.
Any one of you can answer.
Right.
Good morning again. When we speak of a landlord, we speak of a person who owns and leases apartments, building, or any form of real estate to others for a price. Now, that person would collect payment in the form of rent, and this can be traditionally paid monthly. They have the right to negotiate payments and rental agreements, which must be signed by the tenant. Who is a tenant? A tenant is someone who pays the rent for a place that they live in or a building, and that is used. It is occupied by that person temporarily. That person basically lives on that property for renting for just a short span of time.
Right. So I am living at Tom Jones' house, and he only charges me at the end of the month $1. Am I really paying a rent in the fact that I'm just paying $1? When we look at the definition of landlord and tenant, would I be considered to be a tenant regardless of the value?
Yes, regardless of the value, you are a tenant, because it's not just the money or the value, but remember, once you receive a receipt, and of course, you are considered to be a tenant.
Right.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So, Ms. Chichester, in regards to who is a tenant, for the benefit of our listeners, can you just say it again, especially the tenant? We all know landlords.
Yes.
But persons question the position of tenants. Who really is a tenant?
A tenant is someone who pays rent for the place that they live in. So whether it's a building or a apartment,
Right.
you actually pays a rent for the place that you live in. That place is occupied by that person temporarily.
Right.
So normally you would have documents would be prepared. You sign. The person that you're renting from would sign. So there is an agreement that both parties can stand by. For in case the time reaches when that person may have to vacate the area, that document that you have stands. So the document is basically there so that both parties can be on par with what is actually taking place. So, for instance, we have persons might say, I didn't know that, or I didn't understand that, but the document is what stands in the midst of everything. So once you
Right.
have that documentation, this party cannot say they didn't know anything or they wasn't aware of it, because
Right.
the most important thing is that you're signed to it.
Right. And what I also love, and I think the average person would go away with that it did not say how much.
How much.
The fact is you pay,
You pay.
for,
For it.
occupying that other person's property.
Right.
And that is important, because oftentimes you talk about landlord and tenant, and it's only when a dispute come about you hear so much things being said by either side, and most time the tenants, because they think there is a loophole at the start of the business arrangement, and they wait for when there is a dispute or something break down,
Right.
and then they say, well, I never got a receipt, or I never paid, I've been living here, but even how much I've been paying. But the definition of a tenant never speaks to a figure. You say once you're paying. So that's the question. And then the tenants must ensure, based on what your definition, that they do obtain a receipt. So
receipt.
that's a business arrangement
Very important.
transaction.
Very important.
But when we speak to landlord and tenant, you often hear the word lease.
Yes.
And what really is a lease in regards to landlord and tenants?
Okay. A lease is an agreement between a landlord and a tenant that the tenant can use and occupy a property for a certain amount of time in exchange for rent. Adding to that, a lease can be oral or written.
Right.
Oral or written. An oral lease is basically a month-to-month basis, and a month-to-month basis.
Right.
So that's an oral lease. But the other one can go like 3 years, 4 years, or 5 years.
Right.
Right? And
Go
just
ahead.
to add, when you hear the word lease, okay, in regards to property, as we said, not just only a building, but remember you can also lease lands. Whether it be 3 acres, 4 acres, you can also lease lands for whatever the reason being, but you can also lease lands,
Right.
right? For a period.
So based on what you're saying in terms of what is a lease, that would fall in the place of the local word you would hear by the lame person or man, a contract.
A contract, yes.
Right.
Yes.
So
yes.
so the law considers that document, whatever
Yes.
you agree towards
yes.
and sign towards it, whereas we as the layman would say, well, my contract or my agreement did not say that. Legally,
Exactly.
according to the act, it is
Yes.
referred to as a lease.
As a lease. Exactly.
So when persons say, well, I never had a contract, we never had a contract, we didn't sign anything.
Right.
The lease in terms of definition also speaks to an oral agreement.
An oral agreement.
Right.
An oral agreement. Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Because many a times, as I said up front, and when you listen to some of the complaints that come into the police in terms of landlord and tenants,
Yes.
if the landlord is in the red, he would say, we never had an agreement. We
Exactly.
never signed no contract, but you're
Exactly.
taking my money.
Yes.
And then you would hear the tenant saying, well, we agreed that I would be here for so. This would be happening. And it's
Exactly.
only when you start questioning, you get both parties most time to
Yes.
agree.
Yes.
And then you realize, well, it wasn't written, but it was oral.
Exactly.
It was an agreement bonding
Exactly.
you all orally.
Exactly. Yes.
So obviously, whenever we speak to the law, there is always, most times, offenses within that. And as I said, and you alluded to also, Saj,
Yes.
that on average, you all receive about
Say about
10
10
complaints
per month,
per month.
Month, yes.
And that's just the St. David's policing
station,
area.
yes.
We haven't come or talk about the other police stations within the division.
Right.
But are there any offenses within the Landlord and Tenant Act?
Well, within the Landlord and Tenant Act, there is one offense.
Okay.
And that being of harassment to a tenant. And when we speak of harassment, that could include things like removing a door, removing the roof, putting padlocks on the door, removing the electricity, cutting off the water, and even as far as using abusive words and so on you know, and
Right.
even also invading the person's privacy. For example, you just enter the premises without letting them know that you'll be visiting today,
Okay.
and that could amount to harassment to a tenant. Yes.
And if I
Yeah,
may
continue.
include
Sure.
it also speaks, it doesn't necessarily have to be just the landlord, but it can, it is also an agent or any other person acting on the behalf of the actual landlord or the actual person that the building or the property belongs to.
Right.
Once once the persons or the tenant is deliberately, like, they're unsettled or in the home, this is where the actual harassment comes in. So once that person is actually unsettled, they're uncomfortable because of something that you're doing, then you know definitely that it falls under the law of harassment of tenants.
So when we speak to an offense, then here it comes. What are the powers of the police, if there are any? Because we're speaking now of harassment of a tenant. Because I ask this question, oftentimes people hear of landlord and tenant. Basically, it's a civil piece of law.
Yes.
Because there's only one criminal offense therein, and most time that arrangement, that agreement is between two civilians, two parties.
Yes.
That I am the owner and you wish to use or occupy, so I allow you on conditions.
Yes.
But then there are times when things break down and get out of hand, as we would say, and the police is called in. What would the police do, considering the fact, yes, the act is basically of a civil, non-criminal nature, but within that said act, there is also a criminal charge of harassment of tenants.
Yes.
So in light of that, what are the police powers?
Well, in relation to that, the person can be picked up, taken into custody, questioned, and charged and placed on bail.
Right.
Yes. I've done this before. You know?
Definitely.
Yes, I've done this before. Yes.
You know, some of those laws, when I listen to it and I look at, no bias, I'm proud Grenadian when I look at Grenada and Karakou.
Yes.
But in terms of my policing career, I always make reference to Karakou.
Right.
I had that opportunity of arresting and charging a landlord for harassing tenants.
Yes.
And you know, it's not that you celebrate when you charge someone,
No.
but it increases your knowledge because you had to research. Because
Exactly.
oftentimes people hear of landlord and tenant, that even officers
Yes.
would say, go get your lawyer. It's a civil approach.
Exactly.
It's nothing for the police. But when you dig deeper and you understand, that's not all true.
Exactly.
So it's just like boundary disputes,
Yes.
land boundaries.
Yes.
If you remove a boundary, it's a criminal
It's a
offense.
criminal offense, yes.
And the police have a duty to respond.
Respond.
If one of the parties say that I saw Tom remove my boundary, he has no dealings with that, I want my matter go to court.
Exactly.
And I just use it as a marriage because most time land issues are civil.
As civilians, yes.
But here it is within the landlord and tenant aspect. And listeners, these are things that you need to know. You know, whenever I hear that, I get excited
Of
because oftentimes we realize that civil disputes, if not responded to properly by the police when invited, can swiftly
turn into a criminal.
turn into criminal.
Yes.
It can swiftly escalate
Yes.
into criminal.
Yes.
And that takes me back to 2012, I believe, when we had the upsurge in murder. That year we made a record.
Yes.
But most of those stem from domestic violence relations.
Yes.
Brother and brother, man and woman,
Yes.
stepchildren and parents. And we realized the Domestic Violence Act is basically a civil
Yes.
process. But there is one criminal offense which speaks to breach of a protection
Breach of
order.
a protection order.
But ever so often, the police is called in, because whatever you do within that realm, it can contribute to a criminal action.
Exactly.
And listeners, I am using these different sections or pieces of the law so that you can understand that while, yes, a piece of law may be civil in nature, the heads, quote unquote, the legal minds that prepared those things realize the time the civil process would take, we need a bite of the police into it.
Right.
And it is no exception to the landlord and tenant.
Tenant,
But Sanj, if I may drill you,
Yes, sure.
and I'm pointing the one to you,
Yes.
because as the sergeant, you have that overarching knowledge of the reports that come in.
Yes.
With the 10 on average that your station receives, what are some of the issues, without calling names
Yes.
and pinning down locations, what are some of the issues within landlord and tenants that are reported to your station?
The main issue with regards to landlord and tenant that we receive, it has to deal with payments.
Right.
Persons failing to pay when required. Because one or two has to bear in mind that the landlord himself has responsibility. For example, that house might be on mortgage. So that commitment is not met, then that's an issue.
Right.
So he will be on the backs of the tenant to pay. And when things are not going well for him, if he is not getting anywhere, then he will contact the police to come to assist.
Right.
So most of the time we respond, right? There's another one whereby you have persons coming in. For example, you're renting, the tenant's renting, but you find a lot of people coming into the premises.
Right.
People from all different areas, and the landlord himself might be concerned. Why this, all different background coming into these premises? They will call the police to kind of get the tenant to stop this.
Right.
You understand? Also, we are called in whereby to the landlord would ask the police to come to assist in throwing the person from the premises. No, that is a no-no.
Right.
Because we can get sued for this.
Yes.
Because,
Yes.
You just cannot do this.
But before you go further, what normally are the responses of the landlord when they realize, no, the police, without a court order,
Yes.
the police cannot witness or participate
Right.
in the throwing out, because that won't be an eviction.
No,
with
no,
the throwing out of a tenant. What response you normally
Well,
get from
sometimes they are dissatisfied. They feel that the police should have that particular power
Okay.
in terms of evicting or throwing out immediately. But the police cannot do that.
Right.
You understand me?
Right.
Some and others will understand probably by edifying them of what the law says. In other words, how far can the police go?
Right.
There's a stopping point. So most of the time they're not pleased.
Okay. Okay.
They're not pleased.
Right. And with you and your staff response to incidents of landlord and tenants dispute, what's the response when you educate the tenants and the landlord as to what the law say, or the other course of action, realizing that the police have its boundaries?
Yes.
What the feedbacks normally like?
Well, they will say, well, I understand, so I will have to contact my lawyer. So they will, so they understand. Basically. Yep.
Right.
Yep.
So have there ever been a situation where your colleagues have to or had responded to a situation and you have to re-respond because either party did not adhere to the warning given or advised by the police?
No, I haven't had that situation in St. David's.
Okay.
No.
So then that would also mean there has not been a situation where you all were called in and criminal actions had to be pursued.
No.
Grateful.
No.
Grateful.
No.
So listeners, you would realize that it is important for us to discuss topics of those nature, because landlord and tenants, is one thing when I'm searching for a place to lay my head, and it's another thing when I get in. Oftentimes, so much empathy steps in, and then somewhere along the line we get comfortable and things go out of hand. But before we go further,
I want to add.
okay, go right ahead.
Yes,
sir.
I just want to add a few pointers with regards to the responsibilities of a tenant.
All right, stick a point right there.
Okay.
We'll take a brief break and we'll come back,
Come back.
because I want him to kind of digest the
Okay.
information as it goes on.
Right.
So this morning we want to shout out Everett Prescott, Stephen Francis, Gil Williams. Those are those persons saying good morning to you officers
they
in
keep up-
studio,
they
and
keep their
obviously
responsibility, then they
Stephen
don't have a problem.
Francis is a regular listener to Real FM, and I say good morning and welcome to Gil and Everard. So at this stage, listeners, we'll take a brief with our theme song again, Police Brutality, and we'll be right back with you. The conversation with the RGPF, and we're discussing landlord and tenants dispute.
Police walking on eggshells for you. We never get it right. It's not just the criminals, but society gives the biggest fight. Unwarranted slander we endure every day. You say police is police just for the government's pay. Oh gosh, I put you before my family. With my life I protect you daily, but before I make a flaw, you're ready to hand this towards the law. Remember when they kill Renty, you said I'm supposed to jokey. No man fight with police and dead. You say the force is where killers are bred. So when I hear you complaining, I have to agree. Is you society guilty of police brutality against me? They brutal society. Oh gosh, they brutal. My society brutal.
So yes, listeners, we're back, and I'm enjoying St. David's staff. I'm really, really enjoying them this morning. So we're discussing the Landlord and Tenant Act, and so far we have looked at who is a landlord, who is a tenant. We talk about the lease, and there we've realized that the lease is the same thing that we consider to be the contract. Or an agreement, and it can either be oral, meaning word of mouth, or it can be written when you sign that contract and person sign. And what is agreed upon, what I would accept at my place, and how do I expect you as a tenant to behave. And we also look at the offense within that act, and there is only one criminal offense, which is harassment of the tenant. And we also look at the police powers and what are some of the challenges St. David's has as it regards to landlord and tenant, realizing that on average per month you have at least, or give and take, 10 complaints. 10 complaints of landlord and tenant is really too much. So it simply means that we need to educate and edify persons on the issue. But as usual, listeners, by the time we know it is because the hour run out on us, and Sergeant Hasford wants to give us some more information in light of our tenants. Go right ahead, sir.
Yes. Once again, I just want to share with you, with regards to the tenant and the landlord, they both have responsibilities. So I just want to quickly share with you the responsibilities they have, because
Go right ahead.
this can help in terms of reducing the amount of complaints we have or will get.
Right.
So with regards to the tenant, the responsibility of the tenant, one, pay the rent. Pay your rent.
That was blunt. Go
Right.
ahead, Sergeant.
Number
Pay
two,
your rent.
pay your rent.
Right.
Number two, obey the terms of the lease, or the contract, as we say. Number three, communicate with the landlord about repairs issues as soon as they occur. It is best to do this in writing and keep a copy of this notice. The tenant should return the property the way it is when it handed over to him or her after the time would have been completed. In relation to the landlord, the responsibility of the landlord is to maintain the property in good condition, ensure that it is safe, repairs done in a reasonable time, and he is not required to pay for damages done by the tenant.
Right.
If the tenant done the damage on his own, he's not required, so they have to pay for the damages.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Basically. So if you follow those things, you will not have to call the police. Ever so often. Go ahead.
Listeners, in regards to the rights of the tenants, and oftentimes, while that one was resounding, the average person listening to the program this morning,
Yes.
they will remember that responsibility as for a tenant, and as one of our listeners typed, yes, pay the rent.
Pay the rent.
And oftentimes, if tenants honor their side of the bargain, which is to pay the rent, there would be no dispute.
No dispute.
Persons wouldn't even realize that you're a tenant. Exactly. Because as the landlord, as long as I'm getting my dues,
Exactly.
then you're okay. We have no issues except if the place ran down or there are some challenges.
Exactly. Yes.
And then if you're paying on time, then there is no need that I would hesitate to do so.
Exactly.
So yes, Gil, I really trust that persons. But again, I want to challenge you, Gil, that you can also speak to persons on such an issue. So by you being an active listener, you can say to friends or colleagues when you're chatting in regular conversation that based on the program this morning that you learned or you want to encourage that they honor their side of the bargain. Exactly. Which is to pay the rent. And in so doing, and then if you're a landlord or you have colleagues that are landlords, you need to let them know. You need to be careful going into such a venture because there is an offense, which is harassment of tenants, and it's a criminal charge, which is there on the books. Mm-hmm. So of course, she's in the US and she's saying the same thing here. Grateful. I'm happy that we are reaching out. So we only have 10 more minutes to go in the program, and yes, while I do understand landlord and tenant is that mainly on a civil piece of legislation. There are responsibilities for us as police, and we're going to do that as best. And based on your proclamation this morning, it's evident that when the police respond professionally to whatever situation, civil or criminal, it do in many instances simmer down, quell, cool down the situation. And oftentimes persons will say, well, there is no officer, I don't want an arrest, just give a warning. Now that he or she understands. Exactly. But then if you as the officer goes there and you cannot strike the balance as per law, then it just aggravates the parties more. Landlord and tenant is one of those situations where as officers we ought to understand what the law says and what are our boundaries and functions. But this morning Sergeant Hospital is very vocal. We do heard from Ms. Chichester in light of who is a tenant and a landlord, and she pitched in here and there. But as the records person at the St. David's Police Station, Mrs. Chichester, and considering that St. David's Police Station is one of the largest policing area within the Trial State of Grenada, what are some of the prevalent offenses apart from landlord and tenant issues that you all have to deal with on a day-to-day basis?
Okay. Basically, on a day-to-day basis, we would ever so often have to deal with matters of threatening language or obscene language. Most of the times, person might think that obscene language realizing nowadays that obscene language is like a slang. It's just everybody
Part of
just saying
speech.
right. But what we want to drive home to the persons that if in the process of using such words, we have to be mindful that once the person is annoyed based on what it is that they heard, a report can be made, a warning can be issued, the matter can be brought to court, or maybe made for future reference.
Right.
So we ought to be careful at all times as to where we speak or what exactly we speak when in the hearing of the public or even at home.
Right.
Because our children nowadays, they go to school and they think it's okay to just say these words, just say things, not realizing that it's actually an offense that they are committing.
Right.
What we actually see happening these days that also the causing harms, and it's happening within our youths.
Right.
At school, they would fights would break out and these sorts of things. So we want parents to speak to their children, before, as we were speaking this morning, saying that it took a community to raise a child. But nowadays we have so much things happening that parents nowadays believe, okay, I send my child to school, no one has the right to deal with my child, or so forth. And we see that children go to school and they develop this kind of thing because they believe that no one can say anything to them or do anything to them. So we want our parents to really speak to our children, drive home to them the seriousness of what can happen, let them know that it is an offense to cause harm to someone. So we just want them to be there for their children. Don't just sometimes what parents normally do to if a report is being made, it's not my child and it's not my child.
Yeah.
We are not there with them on a daily basis. We do not know what they do behind the scenes. So whenever a complaint is being made or a parent may complain about a child, please speak to your child because we do not know what they are doing in our absence.
Definitely.
So I just want us to once we get this done, quote unquote, I believe Grenada is going to be a better place where our youths are concerned.
Right, so as you're at the mic, continue and give a shout out to your policing area because it's Chichester, they know.
Good morning, St. David's Police Station. It's your girl Chichester. I pray that you all continue to have a blessed day. And with everything, me, put God first. Do what you do most. Continue just doing the great work that you're doing down there. Just want you guys to know that I love you. You know that. Chichester's love.
Okay, great.
Blessed day to you.
I just got some of that. I felt it. Chichester's love. So, Sergeant Hasford, the floor is yours. But before you go, while you were speaking, Miss Chichester, Gail Williams out of USA was saying great advice. Keep it up. And we have Florence Cyrus is also saying good morning and good information that was disseminated this morning. So that's what I'm saying. The program is rich in and we got to have it running. Sergeant, the floor is yours.
All right.
Yes, you are.
All right. So for this morning's program, as I said initially, I'm very happy to be here. I hope that I would have reached, based on the information that I would have provided this morning here, able to reach out to members of the public, especially those who are renting. And I hope that I've reached out to you in that you're able to understand better with regards to the Landlord and Tenant Act and how you go about doing things. I just want to add one important thing. Ensure that you take a receipt. Every time you take a receipt and secure it in a place at your home, because what happens is that sometimes you get a receipt and you just throw it on the floor home and you sweep it out. And then something comes up later on and then you're on the landlord or issues, you cannot bring forth your receipt and it makes it difficult for the police in trying to resolve it on the scene. So I want to advise persons to ensure that they secure their receipts. And I wish everyone all the best, in terms of how they go about their daily life. Thanks for having me here this morning.
But certainly you will be back. St. David's will be back.
I will be back.
And I was grateful for such a program this morning, and I myself want to say thank you. And to you, our wonderful listeners, we say thank you, because without you, there would not have been the conversation with the RGPF today and within the future. To the management and staff, we say good morning. And to the administration of the RGPF, more so, Eastern Division, EP, good morning. I hope you enjoy your vacation. Eastern misses you so much. And to all of our administrators within the Eastern Division, we say good morning. Oh, how do I forget? Today is the 22nd of March, and it is the countdown to phase 2 of the licensing inspection period. Vehicle owners, operators, please be guided. So if you're within phase 2, that is 2, if you have a plural number, letters on your registration plate, it would be 251 to 5,000. And if you are a single number, it would be 2,501 to 5,000. I hope I get it correct, right? So it would be, if you have plural letters, it would be 251 to 500. If you have single letter, it would be 2,501 to 5,000. Yes, I get it correct. And some of today being Wednesday, you will be at Grenville on the S Strip. Always at St. George's, Monday to Friday. You can also pay there. You can pay online, but it is the breakdown to phase 2 of the licensing period. And as usual, if you hear something, see something, know something, we beg you, urge of you to say something and let us continue to work together. You can contact CRD Eastern Division on 406-0193. Have a wonderful Wednesday. It's hot and sunny. Let's go out and live our lives to the fullest. Be our brother's keeper. And we'll be back next Wednesday with the conversation with the RGPF. Bye for now.
It's not just the criminals, but society gives the biggest fight. Unwarranted slander we endure every day.
Triple N.